All right, so today we're going to talk about the Bill of Rights. We're not going to talk about the whole Constitution, just the Bill of Rights. And we're not going to go over the whole revolution. You can find plenty of information on that somewhere else. But we do need some context that shows basically why the Constitution was almost immediately amended. So let's start with a brief summary of the revolution. So essentially, the early colonists felt like they were forming their own identities, separate from British rule, with different cultures commingling, different religious views, and differing economic system that allowed for more social mobility than was common at the time. The British, of course, did not appreciate this at fucking all, and they began imposing heavier taxes, enforcing social regulations to keep the colonists in line. As you would expect, this led to protests and boycotts starting, which, led the British to beatings and imprisonment of protesters, often without any formal charges being made. So people could basically be held indefinitely, with their families having no idea where they were. And of course, they would torture them, and inhumane conditions were pretty common. I mean, you get the general idea of a overbearing, tyrannical government. So, as this is going on, as the British are cracking down on these protesters, unsurprisingly, this of course led to rioting, destruction of British property, arson, and of course the tarring and feathering of British merchants, which is so famous. And a real quick note on tarring and feathering, uh, that when hot tar is poured on your skin, that leads to severe burns. And feathers, of course, carry diseases. So then the feathers get stuck in your open wounds, and there's no penicillin. So, yeah, it's pretty much not like a Bugs Bunny cartoon, pretty much at all. So, in response to the rioting and arson and general things that come about when you're being a tyrannical government, the British obviously decided to double down and start gunning down rioters in the streets and stepping up their efforts to imprison organizers and agitators, etc. Uh, to which, of course, the colonists began trafficking and stockpiling guns, ammo, and artillery. And before you know it, the obvious thing happens, and civil unrest leads to revolution. Now, landowners see this as an opportunity to have more autonomy, so they funnel money to the revolutionaries. British enemies see a chance to weaken their rival through a proxy war, so they start providing military aid. Revolution transforms to war, and eventually the colonists win. Now, on to the political stuff. At first, the new United States is bound by the Articles of Confederation, which more or less allowed the states to govern themselves. There were definitely problems with this, but the main problem rich people saw was that some of the states were electing people the rich considered to be too radical, and voices that were instrumental in bringing about the revolution in the first place weren't going away, such as Thomas Paine, of course, who famously said, "Society is produced by our wants and government by our wickedness." Now, this type of rhetoric was all good when the British were the government, but now that the rich colonists were the government, this type of thought had to be snuffed out as quickly as possible. So, in short, after several rebellions by poor revolutionaries who were in debt to rich aristocrats, most notably Shays' Rebellion, the aristocrats formed the group that would be known as the Federalists and began a propaganda campaign to form a stronger federal government. Opponents of this idea would form a would form a coalition from a broad spectrum of political ideologies and were known as the Anti-Federalists. the largest faction amongst them being the Democratic Republicans, led by Thomas Jefferson, who saw the need for compromise for the stability of the new country and also to maintain their own wealth and status. Now, I know what you're thinking, and the answer is yes. The Democrats have been watering down the views of the left in order to maintain their own status since before the Constitution even existed. You are correct in that. Anywho, the First Continental Congress meets. The conservatives are represented by the Federalists, the moderates are represented by the Democratic Republicans, in an alliance with the left, who are represented by the fact that they basically have all the guns and do all the work and essentially have nothing to lose by killing all these wig-wearing fancy men right then and there. The Federalists and the Democratic Republicans hammer out the Constitution, while the extreme anti-Federalists mostly just yell ACAB and set shit on fire, which nets them popular support amongst the men who are actually down with the get down, and makes them a force that more or less, I wouldn't say runs the Constitutional Congress, but one that can't be silenced as easily as the left can today. So, understandably, this group is pretty distrustful of government, after being abused by the previous government so badly that a war broke out. And when the Constitution is finally hammered out and presented, the Anti-Federalists can't really help but notice that it doesn't have anything in it about people having rights, and many of the states refuse to sign it unless a Bill of Rights is added. 17 bills are proposed, 10 make it through, and the current government is established. Great job. So finally, we're here at the Bill of Rights. What were these basic guarantees and safeguards against tyranny that the early American leftists absolutely demanded lest they burn the new country to the ground? Well, let's find out. All right, so we're going to go over these out of order because most people just read the First and Second Amendment and then claim to have read the Bill of Rights. So we're going to start in a different place, and a lot of these are also kind of like grouped and lead into each other. So we're going to group and lead them into each other. So first we're going to start with the ones that conservatives just absolutely hate, and I'm sure aren't always trying to overturn and violate. And this would be Amendment 4 through 8, which makes up about half Bill of Rights. And yeah, these are the rights of the accused, because you got to make sure when you arrest people that they actually did the crime, so that it's not just the government saying that someone did a crime and then them being punished for that crime with no proof, like how it was before the revolution. So anyway, let's go ahead and start with Amendment number 4. The rights of the people to be secure in their possessions, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable search and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Definitely, we uphold that. Definitely, all the time. Definitely uphold that one. All right, then we go to Amendment 5. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on the presentment of indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia when the actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject to the same offense to be twice put on jeopardy of life or limb. Nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation, which is some shit that I'm sure we do not ever violate at all. Alright, so Amendment 6. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state,
and the district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, and to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. So basically, you have the right to be tried by your community with the witnesses present to accuse you, and you have the right to a lawyer the whole time, which is something that I'm sure happens all the time, and nobody ever gets accused of a crime and then deported to some foreign prison. That's something that doesn't happen. So anyway, let's move on to Amendment 7.
In suits at common law, where the value of controversy shall exceed $20, the right of a trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of common law. So just to summarize that real quick, you know how the FBI admitted that they killed Martin Luther King in the civil case, but like there was no criminal charges? It's because they admitted it in a civil case, not a criminal case. So you can't take shit from a civil case and then put it in a criminal case. And that's why the FBI was never punished for killing Martin Luther King, even though they probably wouldn't have been anyway. So anyway, Amendment 8, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted.
Now that is something I'm sure that we follow all the time.
Amendment 3 is kind of a standalone one. It's no soldier shall in time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in a time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. So this kind of goes back to how the British were forcing colonists to house British soldiers, both like actually letting them live in your house, but then also through paying taxes to them so that they could get their own places to live. And yeah, it's a really long, complicated one. Honestly, there's a bunch of videos that are just on that one that kind of talk about how, you know, policing was kind of handled by the military back then, but now we have a militarized police force. And I don't know, it's kind of a iffy one. I'm not really going to go over it because it's long and there is a lot of other people who can go over that for you. Whether or not you want to believe that us paying to house the police violates that particular amendment is kind of up to you. It's up for debate. I mean, the Supreme Court doesn't seem to care. So, you know, there's that. So yeah, let's just move on to the everybody's favorite ones. So the First Amendment, the one everybody likes to talk about but has never read. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances, which I'm sure no one ever violates at all. Ever. Nobody ever violates the First Amendment. Congress never makes laws that respect the establishment of religion. You know what I'm saying? Freedom of speech. We love that. Oh, and we love that freedom of the press. We love the press. No one ever attacks the press. No one ever tear gasses people peaceably assembled. You know what I mean? That doesn't happen. I guess nobody really stops anybody from petitioning the government, unless it's about Israel, of course, and in which case, you know, you get charged with a hate crime for being against foreign policy decisions. But whatever. So the First Amendment is more or less there to prevent revolutions. Like it's there so that we have the right to speak out against things that we don't agree with. And you know, hopefully the government listens, because of course the government would listen if, you know, say very large portion of the population was against a particular war, and that would stop the war. That's why we didn't go to Iraq, because of the largest protest in the history of the world against that war. So we didn't go to Iraq because of the First Amendment, right? That's why we stopped supplying arms to Israel, because the First Amendment works. Peaceful protests works. But then Amendment One's kind of tied into Amendment Two, because sometimes it's not going to work. I mean, it's rare, obviously, because of the piece of paper that the laws are written on, and people like the piece of paper, and democracy and voice of the people and such. People care about that. The government cares about that. But in case they don't, Amendment Two says that a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's what the guns are for. They're for when the government doesn't listen to the words on the piece of paper. That's what it's there for. It's not, it's not for hunting. It's not for sport. It's not for self-defense. It's for, defense against a government who doesn't care about the words on the piece of paper, which of course we don't have, because, the piece of paper is the law. And, we're a nation of laws, the rule of law, and democracy and stuff. So the Second Amendment, and we don't even really need that one, because the government is good, great government, absolutely great government that totally cares about its citizens all the time. I would be shocked and appalled if anyone were to attack the press, or peaceful protesters, or claim people were criminals and then deport them to, I don't know, someplace crazy like El Salvador without trial. I mean, so we don't even need the Second Amendment. It's just cool because, guns are cool. We all like guns. Who doesn't like to shoot shit? I mean, that's what the Second Amendment's about, right? Our right to shoot cans and shit, because shooting cans is fun. I mean, it is. I'm not even being sarcastic. It is very fun. So we get to the last two now, and the Ninth Amendment is particularly interesting to me. It's actually one of my favorites. 9 and 10 are my favorites, to be honest. So like I mentioned earlier, there were 17 amendments originally proposed, and they didn't put them all in, but number 9 is kind of there as like a catch-all. So what it says is, the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. So it basically means you can't use the Constitution to deny people rights. That's not how it is. That's not what it's meant to do. There is no situation in which, say there were certain decisions that only affected like half the population. Let's take, for instance, women or something. You can't take the Constitution and then be like, well, we're going to use that to deny, one of their basic freedoms that they need, like bodily autonomy or something. You're not allowed to do that because of the words on the piece of paper that clearly state that you can't use the Constitution to deny people rights that are retained by the people, and the people are us, of course. Like you can't attack people's autonomy or free association or any of the things that make up the idea of freedom. And that's honestly why I think the Ninth Amendment is great. And it's only actually ever been cited like 3 times in the history of the Supreme Court, because they don't seem to like that one very much, but I like it a lot. So the 10th Amendment is the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So that's basically the States' Rights Amendment. And also piggybacking off that the states and the government, again, are not allowed to deny your rights, or at least that's what they're trying to hammer home with the given to the people thing. And I mean, you look at things that aren't in the Constitution, like let's say something like a border, for instance, like that would be left up to the border states. But I mean, maybe I'm showing my hand a little too much there. But seems kind of like the piece of paper is not being followed, and how it's supposed to be implemented. You know, with its attack on sanctuary cities and such. The federal government can't really tell the state government who can and can't be in their state because of the words on the piece of paper, of course, which are always followed. So what am I getting at with all of this? Essentially, what I'm trying to impart upon you is to think about the revolution not so much as the founding fathers. Because other than George Washington, and I'm sure you can pick a couple names here and there, these weren't people who actually did any revolting. These weren't the people who actually did the fighting. And these were not the people with the vision in their own minds of the world that they wanted, so much so that they took up arms. Only the people who took up arms were the people who really had the vision. And they envisioned a government where there was no need to take up arms against the government. They imagined a government that was fair. And one of the main places that they wanted that fairness was within the legal system. They wanted trials, even for terrorists, which is what they were. Like, that's what they were. And that's what the Constitution is there to protect. It's there to protect terrorists. And everybody else who is protected by it, that is just an outcropping of making sure that even this low form of supposed criminal has to be proven to be a criminal first. But the revolutionaries also understand that the government may not live up to its end of the bargain. And I mean, we see the government not living up to its end of the bargain every day, all the time. Anybody who is paying attention to politics at all sees that the government is not holding up its end of the bargain. I mean, right now, we have people being deported in mass. And then I want you to take a second, and whatever your opinion on immigration is, I need you to put that out of your mind for a second. Like, just take a second and clear your mind of whatever it is your opinion on immigration is. Because what's really happening is that the government is going around, rounding people up, not giving them trials, and deporting them. And saying that they're immigrants. And maybe they are, maybe they're not. We don't know. The government is just going around saying it. So, even if you're anti-immigration to the most extreme form, you have to realize that there's no proof that these people are immigrants of any kind, much less illegal, other than the government tells the TV and then the TV tells you, and you just assume that the government isn't lying? Like, that's your stance? The government doesn't lie? The government doesn't cheat? If that was true, why would there have been a revolution in the first place? Because just because it was a different government, it was still a government. That's what the revolutionaries wanted to protect themselves from. The government. The entire point of the Bill of Rights is so that we're protected from the government without violence, but the Bill of Rights also guarantees that if necessary, we can defend ourselves with violence. And every day, the ship is sailing farther and farther from shore, and the ship is carrying the ability to resist the government nonviolently. What we need to do is rein that ship in. Otherwise, I don't know. We're gonna have to re-educate that ship. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I think we all need to take a serious stock into, making sure that we're staying healthy, we're keeping our bodies healthy, we're keeping our minds healthy, because the day might come where we're forced to fight. And of course, we should do everything we can to avoid that situation. But again, that ship is sailing away. It's moving real fast. So I think it's really time for you to not take my opinion on it, but I mean, when's the last time you actually just read the Bill of Rights? Because I hear people talking about the Constitution all the time, but I mean, if you have any reverence for it, certainly you don't think the government should be going around snatching people up and deporting them and then just saying, yeah, that guy did a crime. That's the type of shit the revolution started over. And it might be what the next one starts over. And I think we need to take that situation seriously. Not in a not in a way that's glorifying it either. I mean, that's the last thing that I think anybody wants to do. I mean, when you're done reading the Bill of Rights, why don't you go watch a little video on the Civil War and how that went? All the fun times everybody had during that. I mean, look up. I don't know, some stories about any war. Is that really something that we want? I mean, because if we don't want that, we have to understand, or at least ask ourselves, do we want the basic freedoms guaranteed in the Bill of Rights? Because if we do, then we really have to take stock of the situation as a serious thing that is going on in the world right now, in our lives, right outside of our doors, and really think about what happens next and what we can do to stop that outcome. Because no matter what where you see yourself in a civil war or after a civil war or what that government looks like, I think we have to remember that uh, after a war, everybody has to sit down at the table and decide what the new rules are going to be. Like the fighting is just in between talking and another period of talking. So, I mean, I think we really need to put some emphasis on how are we going to voice our opinion to the government? How are we going to let them know that this is their last chance to stop? Because, I mean, if they don't, then I guess we're going to have to go through that very hard period between communication breaking down and communication being forced. But yeah, I guess that's about it.